Blessings, family. Just wanted to drop off some words to live by for you today. Today's words to live by are inspired by Luke chapter 15, verses 13 through 20. As I've declared today to be Talk Yourself Into It Tuesday. This is actually part 6 in this series. And it starts, so I'm going to start at 13. It says, "And not many days after the youngest son gathered all together, he journeyed to a far country, and there he wasted his possessions with prodigal living. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in that land, and he began to be in want. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed the swine. And he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the swine ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father. But when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him." Last week I had shared that, actually, let me look at my notes. Last week I had shared that sometimes before we even get out of bed, we may feel like we're fighting an uphill battle or climbing the rough side of a mountain. Yeah, that same mountain that we're supposed to speak to. That's another story. I guess we have to talk ourselves into speaking to that mountain. Anyway, what I was about to say was that because the steps that we have to take and the battles that we have to climb or the distance that we have to go, we have to encourage ourselves, yes, even before we get out of bed. We have to pull ourselves up through a conversation. Well, today we see from today's story of the prodigal son, we see that some people have to pull themselves out of a pig pen. Now I know some people even now who are powerful and mighty in God because they had to pull themselves out of a pig pen. Not necessarily a literal pig pen. However, they may have had to pull themselves out of a different kind of pig pen. They may have to have pulled themselves out of a crack house or a whore house, pull themselves off the street from selling drugs or selling their bodies, or even pull themselves out of someone else's bed. And many types of pig pens that people have been pulled out of and have become powerful and mighty in God because they had the conversation with themselves, because they talked themselves into it. What I've recognized is that sometimes the hardest part of this process is the humility that it takes for us to recognize where we are. Because in verse 17, it says, "But when he came to himself, he said." The same is true about us. When we come to ourselves and when we come to our senses, we have to have a conversation with ourselves. And this conversation could be, I wasn't born for this. I'm better than this. This isn't the plan that God has for me. Whatever the conversation is or the content of the conversation, it has to be one that we recognize where we are and where God wants us to be, and that He is waiting for us with open arms. Even if it's this is not my destiny. These types of conversations can catapult us out of the pig pen and onto the path back home. So again, it's Talk Yourself Into It Tuesday, family. So let's have the conversations that will correct the problems and put us in the position to take the corrective measures to get back home. These have been words to live by. May they bless you as well as those that you share them with. And now I have to talk myself into going out here and shoveling this snow and scraping off this ice. Be blessed, and those that you share this message with will be blessed as well.